In this video, we're going to be discussing factor by grouping. So let's take a look at these first two examples, and let's factor completely. So we're going to ask ourselves, is there a greatest common factor I can take out of these two terms other than 1? Here I can factor out y minus 3. When I divide out y minus 3 from the first term, I'm left with a factor of x. When I factor out or divide out y minus 3 from the second term, I'm left with minus 4. I cannot factor any further here, and I'm done. Okay, let's take a look at the next example. Again, is there a greatest common factor I can take out of these two terms other than 1? Well, they do have a common factor of w plus 1. When I divide out w plus 1 from the first term, that leaves me with y squared. When I factor out w plus 1 from the second term, I'm left with 9. And we're done here. So this is the very last step of what is called factor by grouping. So how do you do factor by grouping? Factor out the greatest common factor from all the terms first. Group together pairs of terms. Factor out the greatest common factor from each pair of terms. Rearrange the terms if necessary. And then factor again. Okay, so then let's factor each polynomial completely. So, first example, we'll take a look. We have 4 terms. Is there a greatest common factor I can take out of all of these terms other than 1? And the answer to that is no. Because I have 4 terms, we're going to try factor by grouping. I'm going to group the first 2 terms together, and I'm going to group the last 2 terms together. The greatest common factor between the first 2 terms is x squared. When I divide out x squared from x cubed, I'm left with x. When I divide out x squared from 4x squared, I'm left with 4. Now, what is the greatest common factor of the last 2 terms? Well, that's 3. When I factor out 3 from the first term, I'm left with x. When I factor out or divide out 3 from 12, I'm left with 4. Now, notice, they have x plus 4 in common. So I'm going to factor out x plus 4. That leaves me with x squared for the first term and a positive 3 for the second. Now, we can check our answer by foiling. So I'll do that on the side here. And when I rewrite it in descending order, it matches the original problem. So now we have completely factored. Okay, let's take a look at the next example. So again, is there a greatest common factor I can take out of all of the terms other than 1? In this case, that's no. Because I have 4 terms, I'm going to try factor by grouping. So let's group the first 2 terms together. Now notice I'm putting plus a negative. That's the same thing as minus 12x. Now, the greatest common factor between the first 2 terms, that is x squared. When I factor out or divide out x squared from 2x cubed, I'm left with 2x. Divide out x squared from negative 3x squared, that leaves me with negative 3. Now, let's go to the second 2 terms. So because this is negative, I'm automatically going to factor out a negative, so the signs match up. And the largest factor I can divide out of both 12 and 18 is 6. So when I divide out negative 6 from negative 12x, that leaves me with 2x. If I divide out a negative 6 from 18, that leaves me with a negative 3. Now again, notice both of these terms have a factor of 2x minus 3, so I can factor that out. That leaves me with x squared minus 6. So let's try to multiply this on the side. Rewrite it in descending order. And we have the same original problem here. Okay, one other example I want to take a look at. So again, First question, is there a greatest common factor I can take out of all the terms other than 1? In this case, there is. There is a common factor of 5. And remember, you want to do this first to make your numbers smaller to work with. Okay, I have 4 terms inside the parentheses. I'm going to try factor by grouping. I'm going to take the 5 along with me. Group the first 2 terms. Again, plus a negative because it's minus 3y. All right, so let's go inside the brackets and the parentheses. The greatest common factor I can take out of the first 2 terms is a y squared. That leaves me with 3y minus 7. Because this first term is negative for the second 2 terms here, I'm going to take out the negative so that signs match up. Now, what's the greatest common factor? Well, 1 in this case because nothing else factors out. Now, notice again, they have a common factor of 3y minus 7. So let's factor that out. And I'm left with y squared minus 1. Okay, so let's check our answer. Okay, so I'm going to distribute the 5 first. Notice I'm only going to do it with the first binomial. And now I'm going to FOIL. Rewrite it in descending order. And it does match the original. Now, note, this y squared minus 1 and this x squared minus 6, we can actually factor further, and we will talk about that in later videos. But for now, we just wanted to show how to factor by grouping.